I'm going to start with by tying some loose ends, which I left the other day in the extinction talk, and I want to fill in some gaps in there. Okay, and so let me start with that before I get into the subject of today, which is what is a circle. Okay, so let's start with this, and here you see some rotting fruits. Okay, you see some strawberries at the top and some apples and whatever on the bottom. And the first question I've got is, why doesn't that continue forever? You can see that there's an exponential growth of bacteria, of fungi, of even of viruses. Like we have this COVID virus now going around, for those who believe in the virus, okay? Again, it's not a question of belief, it's a question of understanding what a virus is, like I said the other day. We don't believe in viruses. We listen to the theory and we understand it. Once we understand it, that's where science ends. What continues is religion, whether you believe in it or not. Okay, so that's a separate issue. And here's something similar. Here you have something going on with that. Okay, you got to explain that phenomenon right there, or those phenomena. Okay, and you say, what's going on? Okay, and the main thing I want to focus here is you can see how fast it grows at first, and it kind of settles down. Okay, and so let me show you the graph for this. The graph looks something like this. Okay, you can see it's growing and it goes asymptotically because at some point it levels off. And so the question, the million-dollar question for you is, why does it level off? In fact, this is known as the S-curve, okay? And it's applicable to almost anything involving populations. They always use this sine wave. And let me complete that. Okay, here it is. Okay, that's what it looks like, really. It starts growing, and at some point it levels off asymptotically, approaches the asymptote, and then we have this crash. That's what a population looks like. That's what would happen to those bacteria on the strawberries or on the fruits, because at some point they run out of food to eat. They run out of their carrying capacity, as it's known. Okay? And here you have a famous case. Some of you are familiar with it, people who have followed me for some time. These are Calhoun's mice. Okay, he ran his many experiments, about 25 at least of them, first with rats, then with mice. Put them in a small enclosure, and he let them reproduce like crazy, as rats and mice do. And at some point they leveled off. Over there you can see, I think they reached somewhere around 2000, and then the population crashed. Okay, and we don't see much of that last part of the curve. People don't always show that. They always show the S-curve, like, it continues forever, like leaving it up to you to imagine what happens next. What happens next, there are only three possibilities. Either it continues growing, it levels off and more or less goes, steady, constant for the next billion years, or it crashes. And our experience, at least if you look at the extinctions in the past, every species crashes. Every species crashes. Are we an exception? Humans, are we an exception to crashing? Okay, that's the question. Okay, here's our population over the years. Okay, and question is, are we more or less like that? Are we also expanding it to a point and then at some point level off and then crash? Here it's from the start. You can see it. Okay, this is from the year one, and you see how it grows relatively slowly at first, and you'll see towards the end how fast it grows. The population, how we expanded in the last 200, 300 years. There it goes. Speeds up. Okay, and you can see how that goes. Okay, that's how human population has grown on the planet. If we look at the time lapse picture, time-wise, of human population across the planet, global. Okay, and here you have our world population growth. Now, the red stuff, that's our population. That's our total population. But I want you to focus really on the green line there, because that shows our annual growth rate. Okay, that's the rate. And you can see how the rate grew together with the population. But in 1963, we reached our zenith. And since then, we've been coming steadily down. And I'm going to emphasize the word steadily, because in the 14th century, we had the, mid-14th century, we had the bubonic plague that wiped out, they say, anywhere from a third to a half of Europe, of the population of Europe. and we recovered. We were still quite young. The population pyramid of humans was quite healthy still. So we had a lot of young people and very few old people. So we continued to procreate even after the 1400s. But now you see something different. Now you see that in the year 1963 was the last year where we had a very high rate, and we've been essentially plummeting as far as the rate is concerned. You can see how our rate has come down, and that's the reason for the concave curve for the total population, the red. Okay, that's why it's leveling off. That's why it's curving. It's approaching the asymptote. Okay, so that's the population pyramid for the not the population pyramid, but the total population for the Earth. Let me show you the population pyramid. Okay, this is what it looks like for the world. You see it on the top, and you see different years here, just snapshots. Okay, and the one in gray in the center, that was the oldest one. 1950, then you can see the darker gray, the blue, and the outline in red, which is what is projected for the next few years. And I'm not looking at total population here, I'm looking at the ages. Remember what's on the y-axis there are ages of people. And we're seeing that we're seeing more people up in the higher levels. People reaching their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and fewer coming from the bottom. Why? Again, because we're reproducing fewer children. And down at the bottom, you see just a case example of the United States also. What's happened in the last few years and what's going to happen in the future, what's projected to happen in the next few years. Here's the same pyramid shown for China and Europe. Okay, so you can put it all in perspective. Okay, you can see what China was in 1950 and what their population pyramid is turning into, what it's going to become if everything goes according to plan by the year 2050. And the same for Europe. You see what it looked like in 1950, what it's going to look like in 2050, assuming we reach that far. And you can see it's getting thinner at the bottom and bigger at the top. Population pyramid is overturning for really the entire planet. So we're going from this to this. Okay? And why is that so? Well, I'm going to get to it because I'm going to be answering some questions at the end of the lecture. Okay, people who ask questions along those lines, I'll answer those. If you stick around, you'll hear them at the end of the show. Okay, let me show you this. Give me a second here, I can get it up there. Okay, this we have to superimpose upon that, and that's that we're losing our genetic diversity on top of all this. Okay, and I say that the reason for this is that for the last 200, 300,000 years, we've been inbreeding. We've been having sex with each other, not with any other animal or cousin that can enrich our gene pool. Okay, so we've been inbreeding, 200,000 years of inbreeding and more. Okay, and now even a pack of chimpanzees, maybe a troop anywhere between 50 and 100 chimps, has more genetic diversity than the entire human race. That makes you kind of think, we've lost our genetic diversity. Anyone who you marry today is essentially your brother or your sister, genetically, okay, from a genetic standpoint. And so we end up with this, okay? And these are the, what tells you when a species is old, according to bgaede, okay? So you don't believe in bgaede, you'll be okay, okay? But this is what I propose, this is what Mother Nature gives clues to what an old species looks like. Those are the symptoms of an old species. Reproduction, low fertility, which is what we have today. We have very few kids. We're having fewer kids as time goes by. We live long lives. When you live long, that means you've been around for too long. Okay? And you might say, well, we've only been 200,000 years on the Earth, and the dinosaurs were here millions of years. Yes, first of all, you got to look at mammals. That's one issue. But the other issue is that not everybody follows the same curve. In other words, we follow all the same shape of the curve, but not all curves are so lengthy. Some are very flattened out, like it happens very quickly, okay? And that S curve that I just showed you, it happens quite quickly. And for us, it happened quite quickly. Why? Because we managed to conquer the planet. We came across all kinds of diseases. We got used to those diseases, which became endemic. We get the colds every year. They don't kill us anymore. They used to wipe out humanity. They don't do that anymore. Smallpox has been eradicated, and it was killing fewer and fewer people as time went by, even without vaccines, because we started getting used to them. Remember, we used to cough at the Aztecs. They would die like flies. Why? Because the Spaniards had some exposure to this disease for thousands of years, which was in the Eurasia region. America's never had come across that, and when Spaniards came over, they just coughed and the Aztecs fell. Why the Spaniards could, they were used to these diseases. And so now, we've covered the planet, we've found almost every disease there is out there that could affect us, and if there's a disease out there that can kill us, we're going to kill it before it kills us. That's one issue. The other one is that we're probably going to get used to it. It becomes endemic. Okay, so that's all that happens to diseases in the long run. Okay, and we're big. We have big sizes for a mammal, even for a mammal. Not as many mammals are as big as us. We're numerous. We're almost 8 billion big mammals on the planet. And again, we've lost our genetic diversity. We've got very low genetic diversity. These are the symptoms of a species that is about to reach its end. That's on the last leg, according to me. Okay, so food for thought, and I just wanted to fill those holes in there. He says the following. He says, in a wealthy nation, people have less children because they do not need children as a retirement. Okay? In poor nations, people have more children for retirement. Increased household wealth lowers population, and increased poverty increases children. How mistaken all these people are. I don't know, they just memorized whatever was taught to them. They never did a minimum of research, or thinking for that matter, because, if this fellow would have at least done a minimum of thinking, he probably would have not said this. He would not embarrass himself publicly by saying this. But this is what most people believe out there. That's what they've been taught, this is what they repeat, and this is just they parroted. Okay, let's find out what's wrong with this, okay? And first we show that he just parrots what he reads out there, or what is, you could say, the worldly wisdom, okay? And this is the worldly wisdom. It comes from World Vision, people who deal with these issues, and they say, why do poor people have large families? Okay, let's find out. If someone knows, it's got to be World Vision, right? These people are smart. They cover the planet, they help children everywhere in the world. They've got to know why, the poor have large families. So what's the reason? He said, well, they say high child mortality rates. Okay, so you have too many kids, half of them die, so you have more kids to make up for those that died. Great. Misconceptions about family planning. Lack of access to health services. Okay, what's that got to do with having children, with the sex drive? Does that mean if you have access to health services, you're not going to sleep with a girl next door? Patriarchal values. Yeah, in certain cultures you have this patriarchy model still, with father ordains, and that's the model they copy, and they just say, well, father had 10 children, so I'm going to have 10 children too. Forced early marriage. Okay, lack of education. So we have kids because we are ignorant. Okay, religious. Keep all these in mind. Religious beliefs. Okay, yeah, God sends me, the kids. Social reputation. Hey, you're the macho. You got to have 10 kids to show that you're a stud, right? Family legacy. In other words, it just comes down the family tree. Okay, and then I had to expand on this one. Limited finances. What do they mean? Families in poverty. Farmers, for example, right, may have more kids as a way of supporting the family livelihood. Okay, and part of that is the care for elders. So this is why poor people have large families, and this is what everybody just repeats and just thinks it's the truth, and they just repeat it. They parrot it. They say, well, it's common knowledge. It's like a no-brainer. Is it? Let's find out who's the guy with no brains. Okay, let's clarify these people. This is their notion. The notion they have for what modern day, right, poor people look like. Okay, these are poor families. Okay, and they have lots of kids. So this is the image we have today. We say, oh, look, all these poor people, they're ignorant, they don't have health services, they need to maintain the old people, and so they have kids. Pure ignorance and just poor. And, it turns out they're always dark-skinned. They're either black or Indian or Mexican. It's all those people who have, all us white folk, like me. Hey, we're smart. We stand out of the way of, I'm white. Pale face, we have no children. Even though, there's a saying that we have that, if you have one child, well, that's a modern family. If you have 2 children, whoa, that's a numerous family. Okay, that's a very big family. And if you have 3 children, you're a peasant, you're a farmer. And I have 3 boys. So you know where I fit in. I'm a peasant. Okay, so let's clarify to these people, okay, where their ignorance lies. This is the filthy rich of the 19th century. These were the people who had children. Okay, these were all rich families. Look at how many kids they had. Do the rich have kids today? Okay, and then the other issue, look at the bottom right. The bottom right, the one in yellowish color. You know who that fellow is? That's Jacob. His other name was Israel, and he had 12 children, the 12 tribes of Israel. Why? Because he was a rich man in his days. That's why they put him in the Bible. He was a prominent guy. Okay. He had cattle, okay, so he was prominent. He had his sheep, you know, he was a big man. He had 4 wives, he had lots of kids. He was a rich man. Why? In those days, it was important for a rich man to have children, okay? So something's changed, and now these people don't have children, okay? But, you know, I have a little anecdote that I'd like to share, and that's that I had this pretty ignorant woman. She was from the country in another place, another time, okay? And she had one child. She came to the city, and she had one child. And I asked her one day, I said, so when are you going to have your next one? And she said, no. What do you mean, no? And she said, no, she's not going to have another one. She can't have another one. She can barely maintain one. She had to bring the kid to work because she was a maid. And here was this woman. She was not studied at all. She was not you could say she's intelligent in the sense that, you know, world-wise, in other words, she did understand. And she came to the city, she realized she couldn't have children. I said, hold it, let me ask you something. How many kids did your mother have? And she shocked me. Her mother had 7 children. And that was only her mother, because her father had a few more. He had like 5 wives in the town. I mean, he was married to one, but he went around, you know, and he had like 50 children. They all looked like her, she said. So here you had this guy in the country. He's got like 5 wives, extra-official wives. He had like 50 children. This woman had 7 children. Here's one of her children. She comes to the city, and she only has one. She doesn't plan to have any more, no matter what. And you say, hold it, this woman is poor. This woman is uneducated, and she does not have children or any more children. So you say, hold it, it's got nothing to do with being poor or being uneducated. It's got to do with something else. When you drink wine with water and you get drunk. And when you drink beer with water, you get drunk. When you drink rum with water, you get drunk. So you conclude that the common factor is water, so water is what's making you drunk. And that's the error these people are making. They're saying that poorness is the common factor. And that's not the case. Not at all. It's coming to the cities. It's the transition from the country to the cities that's killing children today. The reason we're not having children is because women are coming to the, men and women for that matter, but primarily women, they're coming to the city and they realize they can't have children in the cities. That's why we're not having children. And, you know, some women take a little longer than others to realize that. Some have 2 or 3 by the time they figure it out, that they can't live in the city with 3 children. And sometimes it's too late. They have to donate the children here or there, you know, in foster homes, or leave them at the door of the church. But it's not really the poor. Poor is not the common factor. The common factor is the fact that we have become urbanites. We've stopped living in the farms and we're coming to the cities. When you come to the city, you stop having children. And you don't believe me? No problem. Look up the following. Look up any country in the world. Your choice. Any country that you wish, that you choose. Okay? This is what I'm saying. Any country. There's what, 100 and almost 200 countries in the world? Look up the one you want. I want you to find out if there's any country that is the growth rate of that country is going down. And just like I showed a minute ago, you know, in that chart, I want you to see if, not down, I mean going up. You'll see that every country in the world, the rate is going down. And the reason is transition. What is transition? The movement from the country to the city. Once you come to the city, you stop having children. So the factor of killing children is the fact that there's this transition going on. When we were in the country, when you have this country mentality, you have children. And when you come to the city, you have the city mentality, whether you're in Nigeria, whether you're in Palestinian, whether you're in China, whether you're in South America, it doesn't matter. You come to the city, you stop having children. Miracle. It's known as density-dependent birth rates. Density-dependent birth rates. What did I show at the beginning? I showed these fruits, and the bacteria multiply, there's this exponential growth, and then they start leveling down, and then when there's no more carrying capacity, they go down to extinction. Okay? So what's happening in the world today, total world, is that we stop having children, or we're stopping to have children. Why? Because we've come to the cities. Once we come to the cities, we stop having children, and at that point, that's when population stagnates. And because population stagnates, there is no future, especially no economic future, because all businesses rely on demand. What is demand? Ultimately, population. No population, no demand, and right now we're headed to no demand, to a flattened out curve that is going to peak out. It's going to reach some kind of zenith, and then what did we see? The S-curve turns into whammo, down all the way to zero. It's going to be very quick also, by the way.